Some things happen fast, like a vacuum finding your lost earring. A dog reacting to the word walk. And settling up with friends on the PayPal app. Send and receive money in seconds. Access your balance to send, shop, pay bills, and more. Download the PayPal app to get started. An account with PayPal is required to send and receive money. A PayPal balance account is required to hold and use a balance.
You said this place was steps from the water.
We just haven't found the steps yet.
How much did we save?
Enough.
Enough to get lost?
Or you could book a stay with Hilton.
Welcome to your oceanfront room, just steps from the water.
The Hilton sale is on now. Book on Hilton.com or the Hilton app and save up to 20% to get the stay you expected. When you want savings, not surprises, it matters where you stay. Hilton, for the stay.
Morning decisions. How about a creamy mocha frappuccino drink? Or sweet vanilla? Smooth caramel maybe? Or a white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Find Starbucks Frappuccino drinks wherever you buy your groceries.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn. Welcome to How Are the Podcast, and you join us as we build up to the visit of Manchester United to the Stadium of Light. In our previous years in the top flight, this has been one of the biggest fixtures on the calendar. So it'll be interesting to get into whether that's still the case. And with 3 games remaining, there's still all to play for, with 5 points separating 7 clubs in the Premier League, from Bournemouth in 6th down to ourselves in 12th. So with cash prizes and potential European qualification up for grabs, it's good to have something still to aim for. But Manchester United are 7 points behind Manchester City and 6 clear of Liverpool, I think, going from memory. So with 3rd place pretty much sealed, they can sit back and celebrate the return of Champions League football. So to talk all things Manchester United, we have a podcaster and author and also a reporter on United for The Athletic, because we're very pleased to have Carl Anka with us. Hello, Carl.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Absolute pleasure to have you on. How's things?
Yeah, doing very well, thank you. Doing very well. It's a good time to be a Manchester United fan.
yeah. Well, actually, I just mentioned in the intro, of course, them qualifying for the Champions League, but obviously Man United fans are going to be celebrating that. But as a reporter, do you do a little bit of celebrating because you're going to be covering those big games next season?
Yeah. You start thinking about the European ramifications. So earlier today, when we did our podcast, Talk of the Devils, our presenter Ian said that Manchester United are likely to be in pot 2 for the Champions League, which means there's going to be a chance that when the league phase comes out, they're going to play a pot 1 team. So that's a Real Madrid, a PSG, a Bayern Munich, 1 home and 1 away. And yeah, okay, the prospect of playing this PSG team might frighten you, but also the idea that a team of that quality is going to go toe to toe with your team, and you're going to see how your team fares up against the best of the very best. That brings a smile to my face. You know, the idea of all the stadiums. It's not just the big ones. It's not just, the idea that you might be able to go to the San Siro before it gets knocked down, or you might go to the brand new Bernabeu, but also the pot 4 ones. So yeah, the idea of maybe you're going to go to the stadium of one of the quote unquote smaller European champions across the continent. That's also exciting too. So European football, after a season without it for Manchester United, the idea they're going back in the Champions League at first time advancing. Yeah, quite nice.
Yeah, I was going to say, have you been taking a bit of stick this year from the Arsenal reporters or Villa reporters and, all them going from stadium to stadium across Europe?
Thankfully at The Athletic, you've got a very collegiate crew. No one's rubbing salt in the wounds. If anything, it's more going up to the Tottenham Hotspur reporter going, "Are you okay?" Because bless them, they've been very busy this year, haven't they?
Yeah, well, it could have well been United actually in that position if things had gone really bad like Spurs. But anyway, we'll get back to the football. We'll circle back to that because I want to talk a little bit about you first, Carl, because I was reading when you first set out that actually you wanted to write movie scripts, but you ended up writing about football, if that's right. So how did that end up happening?
Yeah. So I initially went to university 2009 to be a screenwriter. Graduated 2012. knocked up a CV, sent it over to someone who made documentaries. And they rang me up on a Wednesday afternoon and said, "Why have you sent me your CV?" Well, I'd quite like you to mentor me. And I went, "No, you don't. You've written a journalist CV. You should go be a journalist instead and leave me alone." And they hung up on me. I went, "Oh, okay." This was a university mentorship scheme. And the university went, "Do you want me to find you a journalist to mentor you, or do you want to find another filmmaker?" And I went, "Well, I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And it's the end of the final year of university." And I said, "Well, if you can find me a journalist who can mentor me, I'll give that a go for a couple of weeks." And through many hirings, many firings, many words written about many things, here I am, a reporter for the New York Times covering one of the most written about football clubs in the world. It's weird how life turns out.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, though, surely football kicks up better scripts than Hollywood, doesn't it?
So I did a video. It's on BBC iPlayer. So BBC iPlayer have a short film series, and I did a 5-minute video with them explaining why, even though football has incredible narratives, it's actually quite hard to make a good football film in the way that we have very good basketball films, we have very good baseball films, because the way football is very, very dynamic, and the fact that it's 11v11, it can be really, really hard to do that sort of. So we've had Mean Machine, we've had Kung Fu Soccer. But football's quite hard to get on camera unless you shoot it like a normal football game, which isn't the best way to do for Hollywood. So yeah, I suppose a lot of people ask me questions like, "Oh, Carl, how do you combine your love of football, your love of cinema, or your love of this and this and this?" And the answer is, because I don't really watch TV anymore. The television I'm watching, when people go, "Oh, are you watching House of the Dragon, or are you watching Plumerius?" My answer is no. I'm watching Manchester United 2015-16. That's my 2 hours of prestige drama.
Well, I did think you were going to mention goal in all of those, because that could have been a very premature end to this podcast with that lot up the road. But anyway, you said obviously you ended up at the Athletic, and I saw that you were reporting on Southampton, I think, before Manchester United, if that's right. And so how does that work? Is that almost like getting a little bit of a promotion if you're reporting for Southampton and you get the offer to report on Manchester United?
So when the Athletic launched just after the Community Shield ahead of the 2019-2020 season, I was given the opportunity to be the Southampton reporter, and I thought it was fantastic. It was a real eye-opening experience for me because I am a Manchester United fan, and a season home and away covering a team outside the top six, a team that at the time spent a good chunk of the first half of the season in a relegation battle, only to power through and have a really strong end to the season. This is also the season that had a 110-day break due to COVID. And for me, one of the great learning experiences watching non-top six football week in, week out was just how hard it is to get free decisions going your way when you're up against a top six club.
Welcome to our world.
Yeah. So, or indeed how spoiled, protected, however you want to describe it. Just this sort of idea that pretty much in all my life as a Manchester United fan, Manchester United are going to win the majority of their games at home. Or this idea that if a good player emerges at my football club, they're going to stay there for as long as the club wants. Or this idea that you're going to have more successful transfer windows than unsuccessful transfer windows. So tiny little things went, oh, this is how 99% of the football population watches football. Like, it's actually like quite a bit more football is about misery, like shared misery, if that makes sense. So yeah, incredibly grateful to Southampton fans who accepted me. And even though I made no secret of the fact I wasn't a Southampton fan, but they were very accepting. It took me a while to gain on side. I had to work for it. And I'm glad they did make me work for it, because that made me a better reporter. That made me, really pay attention to the X's and O's of football and look into all the different ways of sports reporting as well. And I think that season made me not only a better football reporter, but a better person, a better football watcher.
Yeah. Well, actually, one of the things I found interesting when I was reading up, when you were saying you were transitioning almost from writing about Southampton to writing about Manchester United, you said you had it dawned on you the reach of Manchester United, and you almost had to change almost slightly the style in which you wrote it.
Yeah. So, um, I talk about this, about how some football clubs work on a local level, some have a national level, some have an international level. So Manchester United hit all three. And then you think about how a news story or a development will hit the international fan base, the national fan base, and the local fan base. And that could all interact in three very different ways. So if Manchester United if they make a decision on a brand new stadium, that will affect the local. So people living in the city of Manchester will have very, very strong opinions about what that new build will look like, what that could do with house prices close to the stadium, what that could do with transport routes if they build a new tram stop, and you write an article for them. There's also on the internet, on the national market, right? Because there was this conversation about whether or not Sir Jim Ratcliffe was asking for taxpayer money to help build Old Trafford, and then you have to write for the non-Manchester United fan who's going, wait, why could my tax-paying money possibly go towards this new stadium? What does this have to say about money that goes towards the north for infrastructure, and who gets that? What does this possibly have to say about the government? And then you also have what it has to say on the international market. So, the Manchester United fan who is based in Lagos or is based in India, who goes, I'm probably only going to get to go to Old Trafford once in my life. I might not necessarily want a brand new stadium. I also might not necessarily want all this money to be spent on a brand new stadium. I might want that to be spent on football players because I want my team to be winning when I watch them on TV at 3:00 in the morning. So you have to write across all of that in a writing style, a tone of voice that makes sense to all of these people. Sometimes you do it all in the same article. Sometimes you do it across 3 different articles. Whereas if you're covering a club like, say, Sunderland or Southampton, I'd say the majority of fans of Sunderland are either from Sunderland or live in the United Kingdom. Perhaps there's, you get expats that go to Australia or go to the United States, but there is the grand majority of fans of clubs of these sides have a more specific cultural matrix. So you can come on to a Sunderland podcast or to a Southampton podcast, and I always make this example of, I can say, your set piece defending was more chaotic than episode of Anton Deck's Saturday Night Takeaway. And that gets a small chuckle because most people who have grown up in the United Kingdom over the last 25 years will know what that looks like. Whereas if I said that covering Manchester United, you might have 40% of your readership going, what on earth are you talking about? So yeah, it requires different sensibilities. It requires different. It's really eye opening when you cover a football team in the top 6 because, yeah, the majority of Manchester United fans don't live in Manchester, and that's not a Man City slight, but it's this idea of Manchester United claim there's 1.1 billion followers of the football club. So they literally cannot all live in Manchester. They're all over the world. It's this amazing, wonderful language football that we all have, where if you're wearing a Premier League top, you can go on holiday and someone go, oh, cool, I've seen that team. I know about that team. And yeah, United are the biggest example of it, but I think it's really cool that now Sunderland's back. You can wear your Sunderland top, go on holiday, and someone go, oh, Sunderland. They might not know where Sunderland is in the country of England, but they will know Sunderland is a place, and it has a certain way of playing football and has a certain noise and a colour and atmosphere to it.
Yeah. Well, for a lot of years when I'm going on holiday and we're a Sunderland trip, people have been saying Quinn and Phillips to us in kind of pidgin English or whatever. That's the only link we've had over the kind of high profile Premier League football for a good while. But I was reading as well, you also wrote 3 UK #1 best-selling non-fiction books with Marcus Rashford. And I think it was You Are a Champion, won Book of the Year at the 2022 British Book Awards. So how did all that come about? And it seems like it was a bit of a whirlwind afterwards as well in terms of winning, because you won multiple awards for those books.
Yeah, so it was towards the end of 2020 when we were in the middle of lockdown, the Christmas that would eventually be cancelled. Marcus Rashford let it be known that he'd be interested in writing a children's book. The way he said it is he only really started reading when he was 17. Because when he was on the cusp of joining the first team from the academy, one of the coaches gave him a book called Relentless, which was done by Michael Jordan's former personal trainer. And it was all about building mental resilience and what training Michael Jordan taught him about work ethic and what separates the very best from people that are just content to be good. And Rashford read this at 17 and went, oh, wow, I wish if I'd read books earlier, how much further I'd be along in my life, which I find hilarious because Marcus Rashford isn't even 30 yet. And I'd say he's doing pretty well, you know? So he went to Pan Macmillan. This is obviously the year 2020 where he's doing a lot of work campaigning against child food poverty. And Pan Macmillan said, would you be interested in writing a book? He said, I am interested, but I want to do my version of this book, Relentless. So sort of helping teach a self-help book about mental resilience and discovering the power within for children aged between 11 to 17. Pan Macmillan said, that sounds great. Let's go have a look see if there's anyone out there that you might like to collaborate with. And I think they more or less did open auditions. And I thought, well, you know, you gotta buy a ticket if you want to win the raffle. So I put my name forward. Didn't think I'd get an interview, if only because there were so many talented people at The Athletic that I thought would get a role or get a tap on the shoulder first because I'd never written a book at that stage. And then around about October, November time, I had a chat with Marcus Rashford's team and then eventually had a Zoom call with Marcus Rashford. And it was a bit like being set up on a blind date over Zoom. So I have this conversation with him and his manager, his brother, everyone else is on the Zoom call. And slowly as the Zoom call continues, all these people disappear from the Zoom call. I get a text from my person going, we're leaving the Zoom call because you two are getting on like a house on fire. Just like crack on and write this book. So yeah, the book ended up becoming You Are a Champion. This was a book that was 8 chapters, introduction and a conclusion. And Marcus Rashford gave me if you're writing that sort of book of that length, you ideally want to get 1 hour per chapter with the person, you know. Marcus was insistent that I wasn't a ghostwriter, I wrote it with him. So I was going in this thing expecting if I get maybe 8 hours across Zoom calls, across a season, talking to Marcus Rashford, that'd be enough to write a book. Rashford gave me well over 8 hours. I think it was closer to 12, 13. And he said 2 or 3 times, he said, just talking to you feels like talking to a therapist. And okay, great. Well, glad to be of help. And yeah, the first book, You're a Champion, ended up winning quite a few awards. It was #1 bestseller for several weeks that year as well. And yeah, I'm still overjoyed, humbled, honored that so many people resonated with it. So many people bought it for young people. Sometimes I get messages from schools in the country saying, our primary school year 6 leavers. So we bought every single member of the class a copy. So I'm like, great, cool. I'll also record a video or I'll come over to your school and have a chat. And yeah, I've met quite a few young people across the country, and I've now working quite closely with quite a few charities in the United Kingdom about child literacy and getting more people into reading. And I'm very much talking to Manchester Central Library for their projects as well. So yeah, I've gone from being someone who wants to be a screenwriter to someone who spends quite a lot of time in libraries donating books to children and trying to get them into not just football, but everything.
Absolutely brilliant. The fact that opened some doors and got you into things like that. But actually, just quickly on the topic of Marcus Rashford, because we might not bring him up again, but are we likely to see him in a Manchester United top again?
I don't think so. So Carrick was, we'll get into this in a bit when we talk about Michael Carrick in depth. Michael Carrick straight bats everything, right? He'd be a phenomenal defensive cricketer who might get you 12 runs, but he's going to make sure that the test lasts all day. You know?
Well, he's a northerner as well, of course.
That's it. I'm slowly getting better at the nuances. Northern sarcasm is just a little bit different to southern ones. And he was asked, is the door open for Rashford if he returned? And he gave a very non-committal answer. But my sense is Barcelona are currently pleading poverty, which is what they very often do with players, particularly on loan. They want to spend quite a lot of money this summer on a striker, on Lewandowski's replacement. And I think what they are trying to do is get either United to agree to a cheaper deal or Marcus Rashford to agree to cheaper salary before they can take him on. So I think what might happen is the loan deal as we currently know it might expire. Marcus Rashford might come back after the World Cup, maybe do a game of the season, and then they'll try and find another club for him to move to as well.
Yeah, be an interesting one to see in the summer. But look, let's get into how Manchester United got into the place they're in at the moment, because I think, and I might be right with this, you started reporting on Manchester United around 6 years ago, I think, looking at the sort of timelines. I think that was pretty much in the middle of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's time as manager. There'd been David Moyes, Van Gaal, Mourinho that had followed Alex Ferguson before Solskjaer up to that point. I think they finished third and reached 3 semi-finals the season before. And in your first season, I think, covering them, maybe finished second and were runners-up in the Europa League. But all of that at that time, it never seemed to be enough. You know, looking from an outsider and looking at Manchester United fans, do you think Manchester United as a club and maybe the fans maybe struggled to kind of almost come to the realization of where the club lived in the world of football after that Ferguson era had ended?
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak personally. I was shocked at how quickly things fell apart after Sir Alex Ferguson left. And I'd say if you read or listen to any of my work across the Athletic, my specific area of interest is football tactics. So football tactics, football data. I am less the person you go to when you want to know who's getting signed. I'm more the person that after they get signed, I explain how they play. And one of the key reasons for that was the David Moyes season at Manchester United, where I was, I want to say 21, 22 when Sir Alex Ferguson retires, and I'm watching Moyes on, United on the Moyes, and they're bad. And I go, why is this team not any good anymore? And I felt quite a few of the answers being given in the back pages of some of the tabloid newspapers and Match of Day. Me reading this, I went, there is something more complicated to football that I'm not understanding. And I felt, because Sir Alex Ferguson was so singularly brilliant, I didn't have to think about football too much. Because I just wake up on a Saturday, who am I United playing? This team. I can't wait to find out how they won this weekend. And it was goals, this bit. And then when things started going wrong, my brain's going, what's going on here? And particularly for me, it was like, there's something to midfield here that I'm not understanding. Because obviously midfield has been a very underpowered area for Manchester United since Ferguson's retirement. So that's when I started getting into my books. That's when I started reading loads. That's when I started getting into XG and PPDA and all of these other journalists that thankfully now I get to call my colleagues at The Athletic. I'd say United as an institution, if you think about the post-Ferguson era, so it's 13 years now without a league title. And across those 13 years, they've played more Europa League fixtures than they played Champions League fixtures. They went 6 years without any silverware. So 2017 until 2022 January 2023, I should say, under Erik ten Hag. So a relatively long trophy drought for Manchester United fans. I'm not going to say 6 years is not that long if you're outside the top six, but for Manchester United, that you feel starved. But I understand everything is relative.
Sunderland fans are playing their tiny violins at the moment.
And also this idea of across this sort of 13 years, there's been loads of, this is the first time Team X has beaten Manchester United in 20 plus years. And loads of these records fell under David Moyes. Then we saw more records fall. There's this idea of across Sir Alex Ferguson's 25 plus years in charge of Manchester United, I think they only lost by 5 goals a handful of times, where it became more of a regularity since then. So that shift has been interesting. If I take a step back, put on my big glasses and try my best to explain it, is I think what happened is, I think institutional exceptionalism can be a threat to many, not just football clubs. I think it can apply to universities. I think it can apply to our public institutions, so the police force or indeed it can apply to governments and countries, where or corporations, where if you go, we don't need to do this thing that everyone else is doing because we are this and we are therefore the best and don't need to do it, eventually the rest of the world catches up with you. And I think that happened with Manchester United in the last 13 years, in that there was a long point in time under Sir Alex Ferguson where they didn't necessarily have to be the smartest operators in the room because they were the biggest or they had the most weight. There have been stories of Ferguson picking up the phone, ringing up an opposition manager going, look, I'm buying your player. And the manager's like, oh, fine. And that, what's the price? And through some sort of magical voodoo, Manchester United managed to relatively underpay for very good players. Whereas now when Manchester United go to the market, they're not necessarily the team that have the most money. They're not necessarily the team that has the biggest wages. They're not even necessarily the team that has Champions League football that they can put on the table above others. So we're talking right now this summer. Manchester United really want to buy Elliot Anderson at Nottingham Forest, but also Manchester City really want to buy him too. And I can't tell you with certainty that United are going to win that war. And that, if you told that to a Manchester United fan in 1997, they'd look at you as if you'd sprouted three heads. Like, what do you mean someone would choose to play for a different Premier League club other than Manchester United? What do you mean? So that's been interesting. I'd also say, you mentioned the post-Ferguson managers, the argument I always put forward is every post-Ferguson manager, their strength is the counter to the previous man's weakness.
Yeah.
So David Moyes, the big criticism of David Moyes in charge of Manchester United was he wasn't suited to running a big club. The job was too big for him. So they went out and got Louis van Gaal, and the idea was Louis van Gaal's been in charge of Bayern Munich, he's been in charge of Barcelona, he's been in charge of Ajax. He would understand what it's like running a big club. And then towards the end of Van Gaal, there was this idea that Van Gaal was maybe yesterday's man and he needed to get someone who could meet the current moment, particularly the fact that Pep Guardiola was going to Manchester City. So they go off and they get Mourinho. And then the criticism of Mourinho towards the end was Mourinho is just toxic. So they needed to get someone to heal the broken dressing room. So in comes Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. And then the criticism towards Ole Gunnar Solskjaer towards the end of his tenure was he wasn't the best with tactics. So they needed to go get a tactical brain so they can go up against Liverpool and Man City. So they went out and got Erik ten Hag. Now, one of the criticisms of Erik ten Hag was he was bad at communicating his ideas and he was very confusing in press conferences. So in comes Ruben Amorim, who had a very, very clear idea of what he wanted to play. And he's very easy on the eye and he's very, very charming in press conferences. And then now the criticism was, well, Ruben Amorim didn't actually understand the Manchester United way of playing. He tried to change too much. And also he caused a little bit too much trouble in his press conferences because he was too honest. So in comes Michael Carrick, Manchester United DNA, been there, done that, got the t-shirt, won all the trophies. And he's also very, very calm in a way that Amorim isn't. So that's how you get 13 years where you go, whoop, 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 whoop. Because instead of trying to address the underlying issue, which is how do Manchester United go from being a very rich club that's in the middle of the pack to once again being on the cutting edge, they just went, how do we solve the last guy's problem? Which I think happens for many clubs where you can just get into very weird cycles where you're not dealing with the actual issue. You're just doing short-term problem solving.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just described basically how England, the FA appointed managers for years and years. With England, they always appointed the opposite to the last person who was in charge. But just in terms of the environment that these managers have got to manage in, because one of the factors that these managers have had to deal with, which I don't think Alex Ferguson did too much, although he did put himself in a position where he was maybe immune from it. But there's so many ex-United players who are now pundits. You've got Gary Neville and Roy Keane basically talking about Manchester United week after week, and millions of people are listening. You've got Paul Scholes and Nicky Butt talking about Manchester United week after week, millions of people listening. They're constantly being asked to comment when they're not doing their own thing. Does that not just ramp up the pressure on whoever's in charge of Manchester United?
I think so. So there's a phenomenal book by Simon Cooper, just called Barca. And within it, Cooper brings up this word that Johan Cruyff used to talk about Barcelona called entorno. So in Catalan, it just means environment. But Johan Cruyff said, there's your football club, but there's also the entorno of a football club. It is this idea that anyone who possibly relies on the football club to help pay their wage or help take their mind off what they do to pay their wage belongs to the entorno. So I am a Manchester United reporter. I am also a Manchester United fan. So I belong to the Manchester United entorno and environment, and my opinions on the entorno and environment may also help shape a little corner of it. And of course, every single football club has their own internal and they have their own interpersonal beefs. I'm sure there are people in one section of the Stadium of Light who has very strong opinions about what time you should turn up before kickoff compared to other ones. So that's like your own personal internal in Sunderland. And I think the United one is particularly weird within England because of, like you say, the class of 92. Many members have their own very successful businesses talking about Manchester United. And it also feeds back into press conferences in a way that it perhaps would not feed back into Libri, where very, very often there will be a journalist going, Carrick, Amarin, Ten Hag, here's something that Gary Neville said about you. What are your thoughts about this? And you can create this situation where you've almost got the manager going, like, do any of you want to talk about the football? So we're talking right now on a Thursday afternoon. I would be, and I mean no disrespect here, I would be surprised if someone in this press conference is going to ask Michael Carrick a question about Sunderland. Because that very often in press conferences at Manchester United, the opposition team doesn't really come up in a discussion because the conversation will be about, now you've secured Champions League football, who are you going to try and buy? Are you interested in, what are your thoughts on Bruno Fernandes? What are your thoughts on what Roy Keane or Gary Neville said? What are your thoughts on this academy player who's possibly going to break through? What are your thoughts on Manchester City right now and the FA Youth Club? And of course, yeah, you get the questions about injuries and everything else. But yeah, Manchester United are such a huge news entity that it truly does dwarf everything. Like you can make the argument that there are bigger football clubs in the world. If someone wants to come up to me and says Real Madrid's a bigger football club, sure. Or Barcelona, fine. Or if you want to go about Bayern Munich, I'm not going to do that argument anymore. I think Manchester United are the most written about and spoken about football club on the planet, if only because it's the English language, and that's the second most spoken language in the world. And I think their global presence creates unique pressures because you're not just the manager or head coach of a football club. You are the front face, the most news, you're the most senior executive of a football club that's meant to be responsible for the enjoyment of 500 million people. And then even then, the non-Man United fans who like to rubberneck, they're still paying attention too. Because as we all now know, when your team loses badly, it's not just you reading it, it's also the opposition team going, hello, what's this all? Well, hang on, I want to have a look. Or indeed, your most hated rivals might have a look going, oh, look at that. So yeah, I do a Manchester United podcast and I've been told by Chelsea fans, Tottenham Hotspur fans, Newcastle fans, oh, I had to listen to your podcast after you lost. I'm like, okay, yeah, cheers, mate.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a world away from Michael Carrick from talking about the likes of Bristol City and Watford and things like that at his press conference. But just before we get on to the current season, we'll take a quick break, so we'll be back very soon.
Kayak gets my flight, hotel, and rental car right, so I can tune out travel advice that's just plain wrong.
Bro, Skycoin. Way better than points.
Never fly during a Scorpio full moon.
Just tell the manager you'll sue. Instant room upgrade.
Stop taking bad travel advice. Start comparing hundreds of sites with Kayak and get your trip right. Kayak. Got that right.
Introducing the new Best Skin Ever Ultra Slim Precision Concealer from Sephora Collection. It's full coverage with a matte finish and perfect for any look. Whether you're building it up for a full glam moment or targeting correction for a more natural vibe. At only $12, it's great for affordable touch-ups on the go. Get this new must-have concealer at Sephora or at Sephora.com today.
This episode is brought to you by Perfect Bistro Cat Food. Cats, this ad is for you. Has your human ever called you picky, persnickety, choosy? If so, Perfect Bistro Cat Food is for you. With ingredients like wild-caught tuna and pasture-raised lamb, tantalizing textures, and delectable flavors that meet even the most discerning cat standards. You're not picky, you're just perfectionists. Perfect Bistro, mealtime perfection for every cat. Have your human visit perfectbistro.com.
And welcome back to How We're the Podcast. And we're just about to get into the current season and where Manchester United are now. But if we go back to the summer and the start of the season, Carl, 3 players arrived for for over 70 million. I think that surprised a few people. And again, that interview with Gary Neville and Jim Ratcliffe as well on the finances and things like that. So I think it kind of surprised people that they spent so much. But then, of course, the spotlight was on Amram to hit the ground running this season, and then they lost 3 of the first 6 games. Do you think at that point it was just a matter of time of when Amram would go at that point?
No, strangely. And set the scene. Manchester United lose the Europa League final to Tottenham Hotspur, and there was this idea, this belief that they were going to be in the wilderness for a bit. So Omar Barada, who's the CEO, informed club staff that the current budgets were going to set for the next 3 seasons in the Europa League, and they immediately failed season 1 of getting into the Europa League or the Champions League. There were more job cuts that summer as well, and United, the noises coming from the club were United were going to go into the market to try and fix things, but perhaps it wasn't going to be a 200 million plus summer. They go out and get Cunha very, very quickly, pay his release clause. Then you find out their interest in Brian Mbeumo. There was a point where it looked like Mbeumo could have gone to Tottenham Hotspur to join Thomas Frank, or perhaps there was some interest from Newcastle. But then Mbeumo went, no, I want Man United. And that was an interesting moment for United fans going, oh, we're not in Europe, but we still have pull. And I think that signing, or the noise of that signing, helped bring a bit of boost or a lift to the fan base. It's not quite Granit Xhaka going to Sunderland, but sometimes one player going, is these lot, you go, oh, we're going to be serious this season. So that was good. Now, when the Mbeumo deal was done, it was 71 million, probably higher than what Manchester United wanted. And United pleaded poverty throughout the rest of the summer. That's it. That's done. We might get 2 or 3 players in, but there's no big money left. And then eventually you hear all this stuff about buying Šeško. And you're like, you've just been pleading poverty 20 minutes ago. And what we found out later after the deal was done was that Manchester United opened up a new revolving credit facility, which again is this amazing thing of you want to get into football or football tactics, and in the end you start learning about finance, history, taxation, public transport, and civic engineering. I'm sure you know 3 or 4 things.
I saw your comments actually saying that the more you get into know more the insides of football, it's like knowing how a sausage is made, I think.
Absolutely. It just transforms your ability to understand everything. I've got very strong opinions on public transport and happy hour, and cities with a good happy hour because I've got into football. So if you live in a city that's got a very good if your bars have loads of happy hours, that traditionally means your city has a really bad rush hour problem. Yeah, bizarre. Anyway, so they opened this new revolving credit facility. So it's an incredible oversimplification. It's sort of like extending your overdraft or getting another line of credit on your credit card. And that's paid for Šeško. So 250 million on 3 attacking players. They had some sort of talks with Carlos Baleba as well via intermediaries. So you're going, oh, they do know they need a midfielder. They can't get that deal done because Brighton went 100 million. They get a transfer deadline day deal done for Sané Lamans. But obviously deadline day happens after the season's already begun. And before a ball's kicked, I said if Manchester United finished higher than 8th, I'd be pleasantly surprised. I thought United were a Europa League quality squad. I thought their midfield recruitment was or the lack of midfield recruitment left them underpowered, particularly as Amram wanted to play a 3-4-3. And the midfield, if you have 2 players in that midfield, those 2 players need to be mad dogs capable of running 15 kilometers per game. And I thought, they'll be better than what they were last season, but I'm not sure they're going to be back in the Champions League. The way the season starts, they played well against Arsenal, but they lost. Now, this was something that I found quite interesting in loads of press conferences. Like Ruben Amorim would bring it up quite a lot, going, we played well against Arsenal. We outplayed Arsenal. But to my mind, I'm going, is it sensible for a manager to talk about outplaying a team, but in a game that they lost? But that was Ruben Amorim's opinion. But all the noises we heard throughout that first, I'd say up until Christmas, was Manchester United were fully committed to Ruben Amorim. They wanted to make this work. Even when they had some really bad results, so they get, they lose in the League Cup second round against Grimsby Town, and Amorim spoke quite candidly and angrily. He said his players spoke very loud in that defeat. There was a little like, oh, is he going to be sacked? But no. There was also the game against Sunderland at home where there were murmurs because that game against Sunderland came after a 3-1 defeat against Brentford, and there was this idea of if he loses this one, could he get sacked over the international break? They win at Old Trafford. So everything we heard, and there were loads of times I was being invited onto TalkSport, invited onto Sky, and I was saying, so is Ruben Amorim's job in danger? And I was going, honestly, no. If only because the person who hired him doesn't seem to want to do it. So then when he was removed, and I think it's worth remembering, Ruben Amorim wasn't removed due to the fact that his team was outside the Champions League places. He was removed because he had a huge falling out with the sporting director. And some agreement was made there. And whether the disagreement was over who had say over transfers or over football tactics, that will come out in the wash later on. But yeah, Ruben Amorim didn't get sacked because Man United played bad football or mediocre football, however you want to describe it. It's because he had a falling out with his boss.
But he did get them back up to 6th, I think, at that point.
He did, yeah.
But I was, thinking back, and Amorim used a lot of strange language at the time, talking about essentially something being fundamentally wrong at the club and the inside of the club. I mean, do you think he had a point somewhere, or was it just words of someone who was thinking, beyond his time at Manchester United and maybe his next job by using words like
that? Let me spin this one back to you. Gus Poyet said something similar in 2013-ish.
He absolutely did, yeah.
He said there was something very wrong or very dark at the heart of Sunderland. Forgive me for paraphrasing this.
All of the above, I think.
Which at the time you're going, you are. And then of course, when Sunderland slowly retreated from the Premier League, it was one of those quotes that stuck around. But obviously, I don't think it was true. I think these quotes are quite dangerous because the guy, at some point, I always want to go, okay, but isn't it your job to fix that? And it seemed like there was some friction, particularly over who was in charge. Ruben Amorim was the head coach of Manchester United, and his final press conference said, I'm going to be the manager. He goes, I know I'm not a Tuchel, I know I'm not Mourinho, but I'm going to be the manager of Manchester United. And you're going, what are you on about? You just drew against Leeds. But we'll see. I'd say Manchester United are a huge football club. They're a football club that, if they were to get bought again, would probably cost $10 billion for that to happen. They are one of the 8 richest football sports teams in the world. They're a football team that conceivably can buy a £100 million football player. Not every year, but if there's a player out there that costs £100 million, they can go, okay, cool, boom. They're a football team that their highest paid player is on wages of more than £300,000 a week. And they've got more than one player who's on more than £300,000 a week. And sometimes that makes me happy and sad. In the okay, cool, we can spend money on some of the best players in the world, but also going, football should not be spending this much money. Is this sustainable? So I think Ruben Amorim was an interesting manager in that he seemed to recognize some of the malaise that was affecting United when he walked in, but he wasn't good at properly addressing it, and he also started making mistakes of his own. And I'd say you find this if your football club's had maybe 6 managers in the last 10 years, there tends to be a point, if you have that sort of quick turnover, where there's a bit in the manager's reign where they are, sometimes it's very easy to walk into someone else's bedroom and go, you should open the window, mate. Whereas it's a bit harder for you to be in your own bedroom and go, I should open the window. And I think this was going on with United, in that Amorim walked into United, went, I'm going to open this window, spray a bit of Febreze, clean this thing up. But he didn't quite notice that he just left a moldy cup in the corner. I was like, Ruben, mate, the mold, please.
Well, I mean, look, to change all that, they of course went for Michael Carrick as an interim appointment. He's got Steve Holland with him, of course, as assistant. He's got Jonathan Woodgate and former Sunderland loanee Johnny Evans on his staff as well. The form's been good since, but how much is that, to do with Michael Carrick changing things, whether it's tactical, whether it's personnel, or is it the fact that it was just a different voice in the dressing room that made the difference?
Yeah, I think for stuff like this, you always hone in on the repeat words the players are saying. And a lot of them use the word clarity, or they use clarity, or say things are straightforward. So the big change is obviously Ruben Amorim wanted to play a 3-4-3 base formation, and it was Amorim's point was, it wasn't a rigid 3-4-3. It was a chameleon shape, and it could change into a 4-4-2 or this one, depending on who had the ball and where you had the ball and blah, 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 blah. Carrick's come in and it's a 4-2-3-1. And when you don't have the ball, it's a 4-4-2. You know? And one of your fullbacks pushes up. And then when one of your fullbacks pushes up, the other one tucks inside to form a back three. And every now and again, the central midfielder drops deep, but the centre back split, pick the ball up, go, boom. Bruno Fernandes is back at the 10. And when Bruno Fernandes gets on the ball, he's one of the best attacking midfielders in Europe, in my opinion. So it's square pegs, square holes, a coaching staff that has far more Premier League experience than Ruben Amorim's Premier League. So you think about Steve Holland. Steve Holland won the Premier League with Jose Mourinho at Chelsea. So the bad Mourinho season with Eden Hazard, where Mourinho was sacked before Christmas, Steve Holland took charge of 2 or 3 games there. He's also got loads of experience with the England national team. So Holland was assistant coach at World Cup 2018, Euro 2020. I think he leaves. No, he's there for the Qatar World Cup, and I think he leaves just before the Euro 2024. So, and by all accounts, he tends to be the X and O's person. So if you have a manager who is good at people skills, man management, such as Gareth Southgate, or what we're hearing about Michael Carrick, or say someone like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, having someone who's like Steve Holland going, okay, now he's got you in a good headspace, pay attention to what you need to do. So Steve Holland's doing that. We know Jonathan Woodgate is working with Johnny Evans with defensive drills and set piece defensive drills. Apparently Johnny Evans has brought a lot of calm to the defensive set piece drills, which I love that. I love this. One thing I love about football is the not elite football player that has to survive on their intelligence. Because Johnny Evans played Championship, Premier League, many, many years, and he was never blisteringly quick. So it's all about up top. Can you make sure you're in the right position and make sure that quick player doesn't get to do what they want? And apparently he's been imparting some of that knowledge of it's not actually about running 100 miles an hour all the time. It's about what you got up top. Travis Binion is the under-18, under-21 coach, and he's been working on the attacking players, so class drills and individual drills. So Benjamin Sesko's brought up how Binion's helped him with one-touch finishing, which I think is it's the holy grail. Anytime I'm asked to go look at a striker and say, would they fit at football club? I look at how many goals they score and I go, how many of these goals are just 1 or 2 touches? And if it's 60, 70% of their diet, I'm like, good. I'm interested. I can't wait for when we get to talk about Brian Brobby, by the way.
Well, actually, just on Johnny Evans, like you said, with his intelligence, I've never seen a 19-year-old have such an impact on taking a club to the Premier League like he did with Sunderland under Roy Keane. But yeah, I mean, just in terms of Michael Carrick, because they've done really well losing twice in 14 league games, something like that, obviously qualifying for the Champions League. Does it make the interim appointment a little bit ridiculous now? Because now they haven't really got a choice other than to appoint him now, have they?
So David Ornstein said Michael Carrick's in pole position for the role. I'd say one thing that's in his favour is the World Cup summer and the fact that's narrowed down a bunch of other possible suitors. There is no perfect manager waiting in the wings in the same way that Mourinho was waiting in the wings for Van Gaal, or in the same way that Pochettino was waiting in the wings for some other people. So Pochettino's in the United States. Thomas Tuchel signed a new contract extension with England. That's going to go to 2028, I should say. Carlo Ancelotti, same thing with the Brazil national team. Julian Nagelsmann's with Germany national team to 2028. So a lot of the very good coaches you might want to have an interview with are going to be at the World Cup. I'm probably not going to be available till after their team gets knocked out from the World Cup. So that makes them harder to have an external interview. So I think, yeah, we're nearing a point where I think Carrick's done everything in his power to earn himself an internal interview. It's whether or not United want to push things back until June, July to have the external one. I'd be surprised if any sort of news happens before the season is absolutely finished. But yeah, it does feel like the direction of travel is Michael Carrick.
Going to be one to watch in the summer. But like I said, United are in good form generally, winning the last 3. But I looked specifically at their away form, away from Old Trafford. Won just 2 of the last 5, which were against Everton and Chelsea. There were draws at West Ham and Bournemouth, and then a loss up the road to our nearest and dearest. Is this just a bit of a blip in terms of that away form, or is Mike Carrick still looking for a way of setting up on the road?
No, I think you're right. There have been some problems. There's been some injury problems, some suspension problems. So, my big interpretation as to why United had their first defeat under Carrick occurred to the neighbours across the road. I think one of the problems there was United had an injury to Lissandro Martinez, who's their best centre back in terms of progressive passing. You give the ball to Martinez, he drops the shoulder, he pings it in gets it towards the halfway line very, very quickly and easily. He's left-footed as well, which is the thing that many Premier League managers want now. They also suffered an injury to Patrick Dorgu, who was our initially signed to be left wing back, but was playing more as a left winger, sort of that Gareth Bale style transformation. And he played very, very well against Manchester City and against Arsenal. And with him injured, it's been Cunha there. Cunha is a very good player, but he's right-footed. And Cunha wants to come inside. He wants to get into that half space. He wants to shoot from distance. He's a very good player. But when you just remove two of your best left-footed players from a team that perhaps doesn't have out wingers anymore, because of course it's about wing backs, I think it caused a narrowing, a shortening. And you saw there's maybe a 6 to 7 game spell on the Carrick, particularly some away games, where the first halves are very stodgy because you've got your left winger who wants to cut inside and shoot. You've got your right winger who is left-footed and wants to cut inside and shoot. You've got Bruno Fernandes who wants to get forward as well. And so it's just causing this traffic jam in the middle. And I think West Ham, in particular, under Nuno Espirito Santo, was very good at going, if they want to cause a traffic jam, we'll just clog this bit up as well. So, yeah, I think that's been a problem for their away performances, especially. Just teams setting up in a snowplow and going, try and hit us out wide, because United don't necessarily have a great variety of crosses of the ball, unless, of course, Bruno Fernandes wants to go out and do doggies himself. It just caused a bit of a mess. So, yeah, Sunderland have been really interesting for me in that the game at Old Trafford, Regis Lebris, he blinked early and he swapped to a back three. And then you've been alternating between a back three and a back four in various points this season. Now, under Carrick, there's been 2 or 3 points where teams have gone to a back three. United have been a bit confused by that. So I'll be interested to see if Lebris goes with the back three this time.
Yeah, he did switch in that game, and we were better after the switch because we didn't start off. We had a chance early on as well at the back post. I think it was, from memory, it might have been a Dingra, I think, at the back post. But yeah, we had a chance, and then he switched.
Also, a Dingra, tell me, January loan, what happened there?
He didn't get as many chances as I think he thought he would. And every time he did get a chance, he didn't really take it. So he was in and out. He didn't get a run of 3, 4, 5 games that he wanted. I think that would have kind of kicked him on. But I think there was other wingers in there that Lebris wanted to keep putting them in there, and he started to rotate it. And Lebris is very much a manager who looks at the opposition and thinks, I need this player to do this job in this game, rather than saying, right, well, this winger needs 4 games to really get his sharpness and get going in an attacking sense. So he was in and out. He didn't get the run, and I think I think he just wandered away in the end. And I think obviously with I think in the end he got the option to go, and I think he thought he wanted to go, and I think Lebris was thinking about bringing Angulo in at the time as another winger. So I think he just took the opportunity, and Sunderland or Monaco. I mean, I think quite a few people might make that choice, but actually, I mean, on the subject of Sunderland, of course, what have you made of Sunderland this season? Because looking at us in 12th, Leeds in 14th, was it really important for the Premier League that the likes of ourselves and Leeds did make it really interesting at the bottom this year?
Yeah. So I think we went 15 years without all 3 promoted teams going straight back down. And then it happened in 22, 23, and then it happened we had back-to-back seasons of it happening. And there was this real concern that the Premier League and the Championship were just this growing gulf in class. And the fact that Sunderland have made such a good fist of it is to be applauded. I think the fact that they've done it after being the playoff winners, which meant your squad, I mean, I think you made 12, 13 signings over the summer.
Yeah. And then one went straight back to Chelsea, of course.
So a lot of money was spent. A lot of your better players from that playoff run, or players that the fact that Joe Bellingham left as well was interesting to me. And yet the one thing that stuck out very early on, watching Sunderland and the post-match, watching Match of the Day, was how often Lebris used the word solutions. In that he's very much a solutions-orientated manager. He's not about excuses. He's very much about, okay, yeah, this football team will have problems, or maybe I don't get all my best players, but that's not on me to complain about it. It's on me to figure this out.
Yeah.
So I've been very, very impressed by that. I've been very impressed by 2 or 3. I mean, Ballard's been an impressive centre back for me. I think Xhaka's having a fantastic renaissance. Brobbey's a player that got linked to Manchester United several times because obviously he's former Ajax and he played on Erik ten Hag. So there's points in time where maybe we thought that deal might happen. And when
double the fee, I think.
I know. So when Brobbey was announced to going to Sunderland, the thing that I was immediately interested in was, how is this body shape going to work in the Premier League? Because if you look across the Premier League now, the majority of centre forwards are 6 foot minimum, right? 6 foot, quite slender. I'd say slender, lean, I'd say. Whereas Brobbey is that classic early 90s, shaped like a bull, huge quads. And I was the big question was, I was like, how is this sort of throwback body type going to work in the Premier League that's now increasingly about set piece play, the land of giants? And the great fun thing is, Robbie puts a shift in. My God,
yeah.
Right? He bully.
Yeah.
And he might not score, but the centre back knows he's been playing against the centre forward. And I like that. There's a guy who used to work at the Athletic called Richard, and we just really love if the goal happens because the centre forward's just been mangling the centre back to do hold up play. We're always going back and forth with that, and Brobbey does this loads of times where he doesn't quite get the assist, but the goal wouldn't happen if he wasn't just pinning down that centre back, and that's the sort of football I like watching.
Yeah. Well, just your knowledge of, you talk about you're into your tactics and things like that. I mean, it's been said time and time again this season that Sunderland are outperforming the underlying data. I mean, how do you look at that? Because as you said, Lebris is very much, the other word he uses is connections as well.
Yes, he does.
He goes very big on the team spirit and keeping people involved and everything like that. But should Sunderland fans, I mean, should that be something that the club are actually aware of and look at in, planning next season?
Yeah. So, when you look at a football team and obviously 70% of my diet is Manchester United, but I'd say if you want to explain a football team, you should look at, find us 2 or 3 sentences to explain how they attack, a couple sentences to explain how they defend, a couple sentences to explain how they do set pieces, and then look at what do they do when they've just lost the ball? What do they do when they've just won the ball? And if you can figure out an answer to all those 5 questions, then you know what they are as a football team. And I'd say in the numbers, yeah, there may be 2 or 3 metrics that will go, you can't do that next season. But also there are loads of things with the eye test. The eye test and the data don't have to be in opposition. Data can sometimes be the eye test, but nothing is as good as the eye test plus data. And I'd say the good thing about Sunderland, or the interesting thing about Sunderland, is the things that you go, okay, you probably aren't going to be able to do that next season. There's a bunch of other stuff in there. You're going, well, you should be still fine. So, for example, your recent win at home against Spurs, that's a game where the underlying numbers suggest Spurs should have won that game. And if you replay that game, if you play that way against Tottenham Hotspur at home again next season, you can make your own joke there, you'd lose. But because of the way your manager speaks and because of the way your manager comes across and because of the way you've got quite a lot, I won't say large, well-rounded squad, I don't think there's any indication that you would play the same way next season. Lebris strikes me as a manager who goes, okay, that was season 1 to stabilize ourselves in the league. Now season 2 means these 4 or 5 things has to go out because that worked for the element of surprise, but these things are going to come to the fore. I think the good thing is you're comfortable playing in the back 3, comfortable playing in the back 4. You do have some players in there that are right at the start of their Premier League journeys. So hopefully, as they get better acclimatized, they'll crack on. You've got quite a good young core there too, which is good. So yeah, I think 12th is good. The tailing off you're having right now is perhaps a sign that some of those underlying numbers are like, yeah, now the footballing gods are come to call back karma. But I wouldn't, if you get recruitment right again and have that similar sort of recruitment to what Leeds United have done, which is by tall, by physical, no reason to suggest you'll be in a relegation battle next season.
Yeah. Just very, very quickly, maybe in a one-word answer, but Peter Schmeichel said this week that Man United should go out and get someone like Granit Xhaka. That's not going to happen, is it?
No.
Good.
I think Granit Xhaka is very happy at Sunderland.
We'll leave that one there then. Back to the game in hand on Saturday very quickly, because it doesn't look like it winning the last three, of course, like we mentioned with Manchester United. But is there a chance that United might take their foot off the pedal with their third place pretty much guaranteed?
I don't think so. I think they just think now is, okay, Champions League football's been secured. Michael Carrick, if he wants the Manchester United job, will need to finish strongly to help build a more convincing body of work. And something that did strike me as interesting was I spoke to Matheus Cunha in the mix zone after the victory over Liverpool, and he was asked about Bruno Fernandes being on 19 assists. And Cunha said, yeah, now we've got Champions League football. We want Fernandes to get the record. The record is 20 assists in a single season. So I think what's likely to happen isn't foot off the gas, but perhaps more high-scoring games. So not quite United trying to win 1-0, but United going, can we do this 4-2 just to get Bruno more chances? So that will be interesting. I'm super interested to see Manchester United play at a Saturday 3 p.m. because it just feels like it never happens anymore. So I'm getting this on an extra early Saturday morning just to enjoy time in a town. I shouldn't say town. Sunderland's a city, isn't it? Yeah. So yeah, I'm really intrigued by this. It's the first time Manchester United have been to the Stadium of Light since April 17 even. Yeah. And in that game, the goal scorers were Ibrahimovic, Mkhitaryan, and Marcus Rashford, and the manager was Jose Mourinho. A lot has changed.
Yeah, David Moyes in our dugout, of course, that day. But yeah, you said you're going to be covering the game. You're going up for it. What type of game are you expecting? Because from what you've just said there, it sounds like Carrick's going to have them on the front foot, and it's going to be giving the ball to Fernandes.
Yeah, I think it's going to be front foot, give the ball to Fernandes. Dan Ballard's suspended due to the red card hair pull.
We are trying to appeal it.
You will probably fail.
Yeah, I know that.
Given what happened to Lisandro Martinez for the hair pull. I mean, Ballard's been very good on attacking set pieces, and in more than one way as well. It's not just hanging up at the back stick and he's going to thump it. There's some guile to his game, which is quite impressive. So yes, I still expect set pieces to be a big battle. The fact that Ballard is going to be probably unavailable, I'll be interested there. So I think there's going to be, quite a high scoring one. It was 3-2 for United last weekend. I wouldn't be surprised if it was another 5-goal setup.
Well, there you go then. I think that's one for everyone to look forward to, and I think that's a good place to leave it, because we've had you for longer than we intended, Carl. So I really appreciate your time, and because you're going to Sunderland, have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy yourself. Hopefully, you'll see some of the sights of the northeast and the seafront and everything it has to offer. So I hope you have a fantastic weekend up there.
Please send me recommendations for coffee shops, libraries, all these things.
Yeah, everyone. Well, there's a challenge for everyone on the socials. Get in touch with Carl and tell him where to go. And Carl, please get in touch with us in case anyone says anything ridiculous. We'll filter them out. We'll filter them out for you. But thank you very much, Carl. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Good stuff. And thanks again, everyone, for listening. Don't forget, we'll have all the build-up and all of the reaction for everything Sunderland related on the Rope Report website. We'll also have our preview of the game on Howie, the podcast, tomorrow morning. And then Gav's going to be recording in the pub straight after the final whistle with whoever joins him for a pint. And if that's not enough, we've got Nick Barnes from BBC Radio Newcastle with us on Sunday morning to go through all of the action in detail. So look out for all of that. But from us, it's bye for now.
When Mother's Day means celebrating your mom, your wife, maybe even your daughter as a new mom, trust 1-800-Flowers to help you celebrate every important woman in your life. With double blooms from 1-800-Flowers, order 1 dozen roses and get another dozen for free. It's a simple way to give beautifully, with colorful blooms that make Mother's Day feel meaningful. For every mom you're celebrating, order with confidence and get double blooms at 1-800-Flowers.com/Spotify. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/Spotify.